My people, sometimes the quietest places hide the darkest secrets. And this story, not one of those. It all started on a rainy Friday night in a small but bustling church compound in Abuja. The kind of church where they attract everybody, the rich, the poor, the hustlers, the regular Sunday goers, and the secret sinners where nobody they talk about. Chinedu, the pastor's son, was sitting alone in the vestry, headphones on, listening to some old gospel tapes. He was supposed to be helping his father prepare for Sunday service, but like any teenager, he had better things to do, scrolling on his phone, ignoring the whispers and prayers drifting from the main hall. The rain pattered on the tin roof, heavy drops bouncing off the puddles outside. That's when he heard a scream, sharp, slicing through the hymn that was still echoing in the main hall. Chinedu froze. His heart thumped like a drum at a street carnival. He ran toward the sound, barefoot, slipping on the wet floor. As he rounded the corner, he saw it, a body, sprawled across the floor of the prayer room, blood pooling around her head like a dark halo. It was Sister Funk, one of the church's most devoted members, the kind of woman who smiled even when life no gree her. And now she was gone. The room smelled of iron and wet cement, candles flickering, casting shadows that danced on the walls like spirits mocking him. Chinedu's phone fell from his hands. He wanted to scream but no sound came. Around him, the church compound was silent, almost complicit, as if it knew secrets it would never tell. He backed away, and that's when he saw the first clue, a slip of paper clutched in Funk's hand. On it were numbers, scribbled hastily, 7 p.m. Westgate. Don't trust anyone. Chinedu felt a chill run down his spine. Why would Funk be at the Westgate at that exact time? Who was she meeting? And why didn't she trust anyone? He heard footsteps behind him. He spun, no one was there. Only the flickering light, the sound of rain, and the faint whisper of the wind through the broken window. But then the front door of the compound creaked. Someone was leaving. Someone who didn't want to be seen. Chinedu ran after the shadow, heart hammering. He recognized the figure instantly, Deli, the church treasurer, the quiet man everyone trusted with money, but whose eyes never told the truth. Deli glanced back, a flicker of panic in his face. Chinedu shouted, but the rain swallowed his voice. Deli disappeared into the night. The pastor, Chinedu's father, arrived moments later, rushing toward the prayer room, shouting Funk's name. Chinedu tried to explain what he saw, but his father's face was a mask of grief and disbelief. The police were called, but Chinedu knew this was bigger than that. Funk wasn't just another victim, she knew something dangerous. Something inside the church compound that nobody wanted revealed. The next day, Chinedu started retracing her steps. He spoke to choir members, the cleaners, the pastor's assistants, everyone had an alibi, but nobody remembered seeing Funk after service. Until one of the younger ushers whispered something strange. I saw her arguing with Pastor Samuel's assistant, Chidi. Near the West Gate. He was angry, like, really angry. Chinedu felt his stomach twist. Chidi was close to the pastor, too close. If he was involved, it could ruin everything. But Chidi denied it, eyes wide with fake innocence. Chinedu couldn't trust anyone. Not even the people he grew up with. That evening, Chinedu returned to the prayer room. Alone. He needed answers. He found the candle Funk had lit, still standing, wax dripping onto the tiles. He touched it gently and noticed something under the candle, a small USB drive. His hands shook as he plugged it into his father's laptop. Files. Videos. Audio recordings. Names. Secrets. Money transfers. Evidence that Funk had uncovered a scheme inside the church, embezzlement, bribes. Bribes, and something darker, a ritual they wanted to keep hidden. Chinedu realized the magnitude of what he was holding. Funk didn't just die by chance, she was silenced. And now, he had to survive, because the people behind it would come after anyone who got too close. As he was copying the files, he heard the faint creak of the vestry door. He turned, shadows stretched across the room. Two figures emerged. One was Deli, and the other, Chidi. both smiling, but their smiles were empty, dangerous. Chinedu grabbed the USB drive and ran. The compound that felt like home now became a maze of shadows, whispers, and betrayal. The rain had stopped, but the night was darker than ever. Footsteps chased him, echoing in the empty hallways. He ducked behind pillars, slipped through the corridors, and finally reached the west gate, Funk's final warning in his mind. A car waited outside. Engine running. Doors open. One last look back, the shadows of the killers disappeared inside the compound, but Chinedu knew they were watching. He jumped into the car and sped off, the USB drive clutched in his hand, carrying the only evidence of the church's darkest secrets. That night, Chinedu understood something terrifying: in the place where people prayed, people also killed. And sometimes, the most sacred walls hid the most unholy truths. Funk's death was just the beginning. My people, the night after Funk's death was heavier than any Chinedu had ever felt. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick, sticky, like it carried whispers of the church's secrets. Chinedu sat in his room, USB drive clutched in his hand, the files glowing on his laptop, each one a bomb waiting to explode. Names, dates, transactions, recordings of voices he recognized, people he trusted. And then he found it, a video of Funk herself, pleading, warning someone, her voice trembling, eyes wide with fear. She spoke of money, yes, but also of rituals. Practices hidden from the congregation. She had discovered something inside the church compound that powerful people didn't want the world to know. And she had paid the ultimate price for it. Chinedu knew one thing: he couldn't go to the police. Not yet. Not when the killers were still inside the compound, still walking freely, and maybe still listening. He had to act smart. Quiet. But his heart was racing. His father, the pastor, was oblivious to the darkness in his own house, the man so focused on sermons and appearances that he wouldn't notice the shadow of betrayal that had already crept into the walls. That night, Chinedu decided to return to the church. Alone. He had to understand, to see for himself where Funk had gone, what she had uncovered. The compound was dark, the floodlights off, unusual. Every step he took echoed in the empty halls. His heart was a drum. He reached the west gate, the place Funk had scribbled on the paper before she died. And there he saw it, a small, hidden door, almost invisible behind a stack of chairs. He pushed it open. Inside, a narrow hallway led to the old vestry, the one nobody used anymore. The smell of damp and dust filled his nose. Then he heard it, whispering. Low voices, counting, chanting almost. Chinedu froze. He peeked inside a cracked doorway and saw them, 3 people around a table, faces hidden, hands moving over objects he couldn't recognize at first. Candles burned, wax dripping onto papers, some of them marked with Funk's handwriting. And then he saw the unthinkable, a photograph of Funk on the table, marked with red ink, and beside it, a small knife. Chinedu's stomach churned. They weren't done. They were planning something bigger. Something that Funk had interrupted. He wanted to run. Chinedu was next. By dawn, Chinedu was at a small, empty internet cafe on the outskirts of town. He began sending copies of the USB files to trusted journalists, activists, people he knew could expose the corruption. But deep down, he knew it wasn't enough. The church compound was not just a place of worship. It was a fortress of secrets. And the people inside it, they were willing to kill to protect them. That day, Chinedu vowed he wouldn't rest. He would find the truth, expose the killers, and avenge Funk. But in the shadows, unseen, Chidi and Deli watched. They knew he was alive. They knew he had the files. And they smiled. The game had only just begun.